Welcome to Snippets of Wisdom with your host, Mike Carell and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Snippets of Wisdom is the boomer's gift to the next generation and to the world at large. Dr. Michael J. Murphy and Coach Mike Carell are experienced psychotherapists, writers, and healers who find the greatest satisfaction in sharing the benefits of a lifetime of struggle and learning. Coach Mike has spent decades spreading deep wisdom and supporting youth through the juvenile justice system. Dr. Michael has directed mental health services at many correctional centers and testified in countless trials as an expert in sex-related issues and mental illness. And he was one of the 500,000 humans at Woodstock. So now, please welcome the hosts of Snippets of Wisdom.
Welcome. It's great to be with you today. Normally, I would be here with my colleague Mike Corral, but he's off doing some other things this morning, so he won't be joining us. So you'll just have to deal with me. One of the things that we deal with a lot on this channel is issues that pertain to the boomer generation, and so we'll be focusing on a particular topic this morning over the course of this presentation that has to do with the progress of the boomer generation over the course of the lifespan, and how at present, at this time, now we're starting to get a little older and we're starting to be faced with the issue of loss. So today, we're going to go deep into the situation of the issue of loss and its effects and its consequences for the boomer generation. So I can let you know again that I'm Dr. Michael Murphy. I'm a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist who has worked for many decades in jails and prisons, medium and maximum security psychiatric facilities, as well as in community mental health centers, residential hospitals. And so I've done many legal testimonies in courts regarding homicides, sexual assaults, other issues. So testifying in many trials with regard to those kinds of issues. And, like all of us, or many of us, and I can mention that about 20% of the population of the United States now remains boomers. So these are people who have been born sometime in the late 1940s through to the early 1960s. And now we comprise about 67 million of the population of the United States. So there's still a bunch of us around, but we're slowly starting to deal with this issue of loss over time. So that's one of the issues that I really wanted to get into deeply today. This is the issue that the longer we live, the more probable it is that we'll be faced with this issue of loss. It may be the loss of a spouse, it may be the loss of a precious form of employment and purpose, or it may be even most frighteningly the loss of a child, something I've dealt with many times in my practice as a psychotherapist with others and clients who have had to address that very sad issue. These losses, very understandably, create a deep sense of sadness and grief, and even anger and resentment. So as mentioned, the boomer generation, the people who were born in the late 1940s through the 1960s, were among the largest and the longest lived generations in the history of humanity. And therefore, we're inevitably faced with the fundamental issues of loss. Loss of a close friend, loss of a colleague, precious sorts of relationships that we've um, had the opportunity to, and the great gift to have with us throughout our lives. Even though many of us are now in our 40s and 50s, even our 60s, when the people that we lose who are most precious are our parents. I worked uh, closely with a colleague um, over the years who used to talk about the process of the effects that it has when we, uh, as adults and as middle-aged adults, usually we lose uh, our parents. So, I remember the day when uh, of my mother's funeral and just how powerful it was as I dropped some flowers into her grave and realized that I would never again have the opportunity to speak with her on the phone or give her a hug or hear her wisdom and uh, share the benefit of the remarkable humanity of this person who had accompanied me, obviously, through every moment of my life. So this issue of loss is one that is fundamental for us. I mean, when we lose our parents in a fundamental way, we become orphans. And that's how my friend described it. When you're an adult, you may be middle aged, but nonetheless, you're an orphan when your parents pass on and you realize you're never going to have contact with them again, at least on the physical level. So, for that reason, I think that it really is worthwhile to talk about how these issues of loss will affect us and do affect us, this huge generation of boomers, and what it has meant and will mean for us as inevitably we move forward into uh, the future. So once again, I wanted to point out that this issue of loss ha- has been talked about by many people, and there are those of us who may choose not to speak about it, not to think about it or speak about it too deeply, or there may be those of us who really, like myself and many others, choose to think about this over a long period of time. So we'll choose to think about those issues and talk about those issues more deeply in our next session. So please stick with us and choose to like and subscribe on this presentation, in which we're intending to go deep into this very important issue of loss.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So welcome back to Snippets of Wisdom as we talk today about this very significant issue of the boomer generation and our encounter with the issue of loss. And I think that it's something that obviously we're encountering more and more as the years progress, and how these circumstances will affect us in terms of how we manage the remaining portion of our lives is probably the most crucial choice that we face at the current time. So, I just wanted to go on and start to talk a little bit about how loss tends to manifest itself in most of us. This has been studied a lot. There's a famous psychologist called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross who deeply studied the effects of loss and grieving on individuals. And she concluded that it seems like this process of dealing with the effects of loss, and very significant losses, is often divided into 5 stages. And the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And with remarkable accuracy, these categories do reflect the processes that we human beings experience as we struggle to deal with the challenges and the struggles of very significant losses. And the first, as mentioned, is to be able to accept the fact that these grievous losses have actually occurred. I've dealt with many, many, many patients who, for example, have experienced the loss of a child, which is probably the most tragic one that one can experience in life. And they really have struggled for a long, long time to even come to accept the reality that it has occurred. And this is the denial stage. Many people complicate the stage a bit by finding some medium to keep themselves from having to come to grips with the reality of the loss. Sometimes that's through substance abuse, the abuse of alcohol or drugs, just to sort of blot out the possibility of having the realization. Or it can be just the process of just through some emotional process to just not allow the reality of the loss to enter into their mind. So that's the first stage, is just the actual denial of the process that the loss has occurred. To deny the grievous loss that has occurred seems absurd at first, but it really is kind of the most efficient way to avoid the reality of this really horrendous event. And so though it sounds illogical, it does make a lot of sense for the grieving person in the beginning. The second stage is anger, and that's sort of the walking on eggshells stage, when the person is sensitive to any reminder of the loss, and they may be irritable. And so it's very, the person uses the sense of resentment and anger in order to just have the sense of anger overwhelm the sadness, and to that extent blot it out. So that's the walking on eggshells or anger phase. The third stage is bargaining. Though it again sounds kind of odd, the individual may try to come up with some kind of way, bargaining with reality, to see if there's some way that this could, um, uh, they could figure out some kind of deal that would allow this terrible loss to not have occurred. So that's the third stage that many people go through, the bargaining stage. Then many people then will go into a period of depression where they experience a sustained period of internalized sadness that leads them to just be in a negative mood for a long period of time. This has been studied a lot. When we lose a significant other and they are gone, oftentimes that period of uh, deep adjustment and sadness will last for more than 2 years. Uh, when they've done studies, they found that actually is how long uh, the period of deep depression often lasts. Finally, comes the stage of acceptance. When the person realizes that they do have a life to go on and that their life is going to continue. And in fact, the life without the significant other is in fact a very different life from the life that they had when the person was present. And coming to internalize the reality of this new life is uh, what comprises the stage of acceptance. And so, that is a critically important phase. It usually is comprised by a deep wisdom and a sense of um, the tragic aspect of life that is unavoidable, but nonetheless is lends life a deeper sense of significance and meaning when one has reached the stage of acceptance and gotten to the point where they really believe that they have the remainder of their life to live, and the life is even rendered more deeply meaningful uh, through their internalization and acceptance of this uh, deep sense of loss. So we'll be continuing to talk about that in a few seconds when we return after a brief break.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back to Snippets of Wisdom. We're dealing with the very powerful issue of loss and grief today on our program. And I urge you to like and subscribe so that we can, get this very important topic more widely shared. Yeah, so one of the things that we're talking about is that the boomer generation is aging. Most of us have now, by this stage, lost our parents, and we've had to deal with, becoming orphans, as it were, in the sense that we now are living in a world in which our parents, the people who brought us into this world and who guided us through the most vulnerable and earliest stages of our lives, are now no longer available for consultation, nor to share their wisdom or to even work through the complexities of that relationship. So, one of the things that I think it's important to talk about with regard to the issue of loss is that it happens in stages over the course of our lives. I mean, even now, as we boomers are aging, my friends, and I'm sure yours too, are beginning to deal with multiple aspects of medical illnesses, which are sort of part of the stage of losing that capacity to be fully capable as we have been throughout uh, the majority of our lives. We all can remember when we were young and fresh and we overcame adversity or physical harm very quickly. But then when we get into our 50s and 60s and 70s, and many of the boomers are in those ages now, uh, we face physical challenges that we have never faced before. So we talk to our friends and we have conversations about, uh, medical consultations and illnesses that we've encountered most recently. And so one of the things that I think is important now is for us to use this wisdom about loss and the passage of time to motivate us to engage in activities that will allow us to maintain our level of functioning at the highest level over this portion of our lives, which may be the last quarter, the last third of our lives. And so one of the things that I urge many of my clients to do and talk about the details with is to have a morning practice. That is to get up every day and have a, a routine of activities that one engages in order to get oneself ready to deal with the day in the most open and productive way possible. So typically a morning routine would include uh, components such as yoga, physical stretching, breath work, meditation, and it may take 15 minutes, it may take half an hour. There have been times when you can extend, the period of motivation or yoga such that it will be a 2-hour period of time. But doing that time and having, that period of time in which you really do um, spend a whole lot of energy in a very regular basis right from the get-go in the morning is tremendously productive, I think, in terms of really contributing to the capacity for each of us to be most productive during this phase of our lives. So I think, the issue of loss is one that I think really brings to the fore the necessity and the importance of making the most of each day of our lives and to make it most meaningful, to choose to search and understand all that we can, and to really come to um, a clearer understanding of how we want uh, to deal with the final chapter of our life and be able to come to an acceptance of the inevitability of that stage, uh, rather than dealing with it through avoidance, which I think is a natural propensity that many people will do. So I think that can lend a deep sense of meaning to this aspect of life when we are confronted repeatedly with issues of loss and have gone through the stages of grief with regard to each of the stages of those losses, the many losses that we encounter over the course of a lifetime. And so what I wanted to do in closing is just to recite a brief, very brief poem that was written by the poet uh, Tennyson after he himself had suffered the loss of the sudden death of a very dear friend. And he wrote those famous lines, which I think will be familiar to many of them, many of you out there. I hold it true, whate'er befall. I feel it when I sorrow most. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And that, I think, in that brief uh, quadrant, I think you'd call it, it's really captures, the tension between, the importance of making every moment sacred and also being able to go through the understanding and the depth of understanding that is given to us by the realization of loss and the important creative role that it will play in our life. So I want to thank you for joining me today to share the conversation about this very deep and complex subject, and to urge you to uh, continue to participate in our conversations. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon in the future. And thank you for showing up.
This has been Snippets of Wisdom with hosts Mike Carell and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Tune in and learn about the primary issues facing our society today and find the best chance of securing a stable and prosperous future. Snippets of Wisdom will enrich your life and the lives of all of your loved ones.